Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to take you along with me as I harvest a couple bags of onions. So I planted onions earlier this spring. I ordered small plants from Johnny's Seed. I think I actually ordered them last fall, and then they ship them out when they're actually appropriate for your growing zone to plant. So I think I ordered them in the fall. I got them in April, I believe, and that's when I put them into 2 containers and then a few around a tomato plant. And just now I'm seeing that some are ready to harvest, so I figured I'd walk you through the process of knowing when your onions are ready to be harvested and then how you can cure them afterwards. So let's go take a look at the bags of onions that I have. Alright, so these are the 2 bags that I was growing onion plants in. I believe these are the 7 or 10 size grow bags that I have, and you only have to plant the onions about 5 or 6 inches apart. So what I did is I basically put a ring around the outside of each of the bags and then plopped one in the center. That seemed to be pretty good in terms of spacing. Now this onion variety, like I mentioned, it is from Johnny's Seed, but it's actually the Patterson specific variety, which is a yellow storage onion. All that information is on their website. Johnny's Seed is a great website in terms of providing you essentially all the information that you need for your plants. So the reason I picked this one is because it was a storage onion. That means it's just going to last a little bit longer after you harvest into the winter. So some onions last longer than others. The Patterson variety is a really good onion variety for storing. Now I'm bringing you in a little bit closer and essentially going over how you can harvest them. You can really start harvesting onions anytime really around midsummer. They won't necessarily be full grown, but you can still kind of go through and harvest them as you need them for cooking. As you can see in this back bed, I've actually already harvested maybe 5 or 6. I've made a lot of tomato sauce already, so I figured pulling some of the fresh onions to go with the fresh tomatoes from the garden would be great, and they really do taste even better, I would say, than like the store-bought onions. But this bag I really haven't touched, and there's some that are very much ready to be harvested and some that aren't, and I thought it would be helpful to show you the difference. So basically what you want to look for when your onions are getting close to being ready, you'll start to see the tops flop over. So basically the leaves will start to droop, but you don't actually want to harvest until the neck of the onion plant itself is floppy. So you'll start to see the droop, wait till the neck is floppy, and I'll show you what that looks like. So let's actually go over to this bag. You can see that not only are the leaves fallen over, but the actual neck of the onion plant itself, that's floppy. That basically means that the onion is as big as it's going to get and it is ready to be harvested. Again, you can harvest the onions really at any time midsummer, but if you want them to get to the full size, wait for the floppy neck. So these ones in here, again, leaves are flopping over, but the neck of the plant itself is still pretty sturdy on that one and that one over here. So these I'm going to leave for a little bit longer, whereas one like this little floppy neck guy right there, those I'm going to harvest. So a few tips in terms of getting ready to harvest. You want to start cutting the water because you really want the soil to dry out. It just makes harvesting a lot easier. It gives the onion skins themselves a little bit longer of a time to dry so they're not moist when you're pulling them out of the soil. You also want to wait for an overcast day if possible. Usually I think this is more important for people harvesting a lot of onions, but you want to make sure that they're not leading to any sun damage, which can sometimes happen with the heat of the day or the full sun shining on them. We don't have an overcast day anytime coming up in the weather projections, so I'm just harvesting them now near the end of the day. It's actually, I think, about 5:30 right now, but this is when this part of my garden is shaded. So a few things that you can do. You can either use a trowel to dig into the soil and pull it up. That's probably the safest way, I would say, to do it, just so you know you're not actually bruising the onion itself or you're not causing any damage to the roots. But because mine are so shallow to the top of the soil, I'm just gonna reach in with my hand and harvest them. So let's go over here to this one first. I'm just gonna reach down there and pull it out. So there we go. There's one onion harvested. I'm just gonna lay that on the soil for right now and move on to the rest of them. Now this plant over here, it didn't grow too many leaves. I don't think it probably got too large, but let's go ahead and dig in here and see what we got, if anything. Little tiny baby onion. I mean, it'll still work. It'll still taste like an onion, just a lot smaller than the other one. Sometimes that does happen. Some just grow a lot larger than the others. Coming up here to this one. Now this one I already had pulled just to see how it was doing. So we got that one over there. We got this floppy one ready to come up. Ooh, I think this is the largest one I have so far. Again, just setting that over there. You also have a floppy neck. I think that might be the last one because these three, yep, are still pretty solid. So I'm gonna reach in and grab this one. Feels a good size too. Whoop. Yeah, pretty good size. All right, so those are the ones I've pulled, and now I'll take you on to the next step. The next step after harvesting your onions is that you want to find somewhere to let them dry a little bit so that any of the soil that is still clinging to the onion bulbs will dry out and be able to be shaken off before you take the onions inside to cure. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. Now, ideally, you would have a few days that are gonna be overcast and that are not gonna have any rain. Like I mentioned, we are having a lot of sunny days, and I don't think we have any rain on the forecast. So what I'm gonna do, and what I've done with a few other rounds of onions earlier, is just put them on this chair and then putting the chair underneath the table. That seemed to have worked pretty well in terms of keeping the sun off of them. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna leave them here for a few days, let them dry out, and then take them inside to cure. So I'll follow up with you when I get to that step. So it's been a few days since I originally put the onions on these chairs. Like I mentioned, I did that so that the soil can dry off and it'll be easy to wipe off. So what I'm gonna do now is just wipe off the soil, being careful not to tear the skin, and then I'll bring these inside and I'll show you where I'm leaving them to cure. All right, so we are now in the garage where I have the onions laying out on this table to cure. So there's a few onions here that I think have been in here for a few weeks, and then the onions up here are the ones that I just harvested in this video. So if you don't know what curing is, essentially it's something that you have to do if you expect to have your onions store well into the next few months. So when you first pull the onions from the garden, they're basically full of a lot of sugar. There's only a very, very light layer of skin. And as you let them cure, the skin's gonna dry into kind of like a papery wrapper. And the sugars are gonna be replaced by a very pungent compound. So it's just gonna give them more of that onion flavor that you're probably used to. So you want to definitely cure your onions before you store them. Now, like I mentioned, I have pulled some onions directly from the bags and then used them immediately. They are gonna be a little bit sweeter, but if you want to store any of these onions, then you definitely wanna let them cure. So to do that, essentially you want to find some sort of place that's gonna be protected from sun or rain. So if you do have a covered porch, that might work. We don't really have any covered outdoor sort of area here, so that's why I've chosen the garage. So you want to look for a place that's gonna be a little bit warm but not too hot. If it can be breezy, that would help, but I mean, again, we're in a garage, there's not much breeze here, but you also want to make sure it's dry. So this area here kind of fit the majority of the needs when you're looking for a place to cure your onions. So basically you just want to lay them out in a thin layer. You want to be careful when you're first handling them so that you don't like bump or accidentally bruise them. And then as they're curing, what'll happen is that the necks on the onion right here, they'll gradually start to wither away. The papery skin will become much tighter around the bulb. And then once the necks are completely tight and dry, that basically means that the stem up here doesn't have any moisture left in it. So you can go ahead and use the scissors to trim off the roots. You can go ahead and cut about an inch above the stem here, and then you can take them inside and store them. So that is the plan. It can take a couple weeks or even up to a month for onions to cure completely. And again, I have some that have been in here much longer than others. This is probably one of the older ones. Yeah, I can feel it's much drier here than the ones that I just put down. So I'm just gonna leave these out here probably for a few more weeks, check in on them, and then the plan is to store them in a mesh bag inside in our pantry where it's a little bit cooler down in the basement area. So that is how I harvest and cure my onions that I've grown in containers this year. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.